there's so much beauty in that. I've said that Gen Z is a generation of martyrs waiting to hear a gospel good enough.
Welcome to the EAPTC Podcast, where we dive into global discipleship by exploring faith, leadership, and life-changing stories. And each episode is dedicated to inspiring and equipping you with insights and wisdom to grow spiritually, lead effectively, and live purposefully as a committed follower and disciple of Jesus. Thank you for tuning in. Here is your host, Dr. Paul Sungro Lee.
Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. We're going to talk about a topic that is both timely and deeply personal, Gen Z and discipleship. Gen Z is often described as the most digitally connected generation in history of the world, and many of them say they are still feeling more isolated than ever before. They're navigating through endless changes and information, questions about identity, purpose, truth, and belongings. In the middle of all of these questions and wonderings, many of them are asking spiritual questions, sometimes quietly, sometimes skeptically, and sometimes with surprising openness, by the way. So what does this mean to make disciples in this cultural momentum? How can we, as the body of Christ, move beyond assumptions and truly understand this generation? What does a faithful discipleship look like for young people growing up in a world that is shaped by social media, artificial intelligence, and cultural polarization and rapid change? We're going to talk about those questions, whether you're a pastor, ministry leader, parent, mentor, educator, or somebody who is just caring about the next generation. My hope is that this conversation will give you fresh insights, practical ideas, and most of all, renewed hope. Because every generation has faced unique challenges, but the Lord's invitation has remained the same: to know Him, to follow Him, and to help others to do the same. I'm excited to welcome our guest today. Brent Campbell is the Associate Regional Director of Church Partnership at Merrifield USA. He has a beautiful wife, Brittany, and also one child, and the other one coming on the way in December. I first met him at one of the meetings hosted by American Society of Missiology and was immediately captivated by the depth of his knowledge and experience on this topic. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and let's dive into our conversation as we welcome Brent to this talk. Welcome, Brent.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Well, sure. It's my pleasure. As I was talking with you before this podcast, when I heard your presentation about Gen Z and ministry philosophy that you have and discipleship approach, I was so thrilled to have you on this podcast, and I was praying about it, and I'm so happy to have you today.
Yeah, well, it's you'll find I don't mind talking, and but in particular, it's something near and dear to my heart. These are the people that I've poured my life into over the last decade or so, and so either way, it's always great to have a fellow traveler trying to figure out how do we think well about this and live well for the glory of God for this next generation.
Well, I'm sure you're going to talk much about how you got into this ministry of Gen Z outreach and campus ministries and all those beautiful things that you are doing with Merrifield USA. Could you just introduce yourself a little bit and also tell us how you got into this wonderful type of ministry?
Yeah. So you already gave a great bio for me. I've been working for InterVarsity now. It's 2026. So yeah, coming on a little over 12 years since I right out of college, really. So I became a believer in college. I ran track in college as a student and was a finance major, and ended up having a miraculous encounter with Jesus while I was on the way to make a suicide attempt. And that was my junior year of college. And then probably within 3 months, God was very kind to me and brought some people along the way to sort of help me and disciple me and care for me, and did that through InterVarsity. And then it became pretty clear I pretty much could only spend my time talking about Jesus or I'd get fired. So then I joined university. Said, let's not roll the dice on this one. I think we should just try and find something I can be gainfully employed at without people being like, he's nice, but he talks about Jesus too much. So I joined InterVarsity. I'm millennial, and most of my students at first were millennials. Like the first 2 years were, or at least cuspers. Gen Z was nowhere on the radar. That wasn't language. There certainly wasn't any language about it. And I remember discovering sort of in real time around year 3 of ministry that the things that I had been doing that had made me so successful for the first 3 or 4 years prior weren't working in the same way. It was at this time, at least for me, generational sort of thinking about how to reach generations and sort of generational language was just not as top of mind. It wasn't something I got trained super well about. It just wasn't in the culture. It wasn't the zeitgeist of the day, at least in my neck of the woods. I didn't have good language for it. I just noticed students' relationships with their parents were changing. That I knew of 0 people who were millennials who had good relationships with their parents. It was the fight at especially college age, right? The time I'm meeting them. Their parents are the opposite of Christ figures in their life. They are the devil who pays rent, in their home, and just sort of that intergenerational strife, and then even the way they were thinking about power, the way they were thinking about sort of structures and systems. Honestly, the way they were thinking about vulnerability and emotions. Was way different. I remember talking to a peer of mine, and I was like, "Why is everyone crying all of a sudden? Like, what? Like, what? Why are they crying so much?" Like, I'm meeting students who are just sort of interacting differently, and they're not driving very much. So it just was this slow thing. I'm like, man, I'm like meeting like it was crazy to meet an 18-year-old who couldn't drive. I'm like, what's wrong with you? But then the next year, there were many, many more 18-year-olds who couldn't drive. And now it's like kind of like pretty common, So it's funny looking back that my journey with Gen Z sort of happened to me as I was trying to minister to cuspers and by God's grace was able to. I think I was in the perfect incubator to sort of figure out how to love and listen and lead them well. And so I did that for 8 or 9 years on campus, about 8 years. And then over the last 4 years, I've transitioned more nationally, trying to help churches and then obviously missionaries inside and outside of the org think well about discipleship, evangelism, and in particular, those things as it concerns the current generation we're dealing with. So that's kind of how I got involved.
Wow, that's so beautiful to hear your testimony. From this kind of rich experience and expertise that you have gleaned from years of ministry experience, what are the current challenges and opportunities that you believe they are there in leading and discipling Gen Z across the United States? And I mean, I'm sure you can even talk about the world in general, but especially here in the US, what do you think are those challenges and opportunities that you find?
Yeah. Just, like with everything, there's unique, deep blessings and beauties to be found in the generation. And there's sort of unique hurts and deficiencies and things that sort of to navigate. I mean, that's true for every generation, and Gen Z is no different. I've been writing about this. I don't, it's the book's not out yet or anything like that. But in my writing, one of the things that I've said is Gen Z is the generation with the most access to information and the least access to wisdom in human history.
Wow.
And I came to that framing as I was trying to figure out how do I summarize some of what I'm seeing with this, with the people I'm serving. I came to that because wisdom is almost by definition incarnational, right? It's applied knowledge. It's how do I take that information, that knowledge, and how do I use it well to live a good life? Wisdom always has a direction. It's like pointed towards something, right? Even to say wisdom already carries its own implication that whatever's on the other side of this is going to be good for you, good for your community, good for the world around you. All that to say, I say that because I think that leads right into some of the unique blessings and maybe difficulties or the challenges. So on maybe thinking positively, first, Gen Z is a generation, they're digital natives, right? And so in one sense, they get the advantage and the disadvantage of changing as fast as the internet does. I think this makes loving Gen Z particularly kind of difficult because if you wait a year or two, some of the things that you were thinking through might have changed because the macro internet culture has changed in 2 years. You know what I'm saying? And so their adjustment to the world around them is at a faster pace because they live in the internet. Well, we've all seen that even with like maybe our media cycles. Media cycles always used to 1 week it's this and another week it's that. But this is unprecedented. That on Tuesday you could have a war, and then on Wednesday there could be a national chip shortage, and then on Thursday there could be XYZ scandals, and you're moving and you're moving and you're moving. And you say, wait, when were the tariffs? That was like 10 years ago, right? It's like, no. That was like my son, my son was 1, So that's the world they live in. It's the world they're developing in. And I think that provides the benefit of they're like pretty quick on their feet. They're very adaptive, very, very adaptive. I also think they have like a really, what would you call it? There's a good way. There's an appropriate way to say this. There's an appropriate way. They just have a nose. Let's call it a nose for BS. Their whole world is spent trying to analyze, wait, is that real or not? Is that AI? No, that's not. Is that, is that fake? And I think not just as they're interacting with, the physical world, there's an emotional, social thing. Like, is that person really about that? Like, no, I think they're lying. This knows for authenticity, this knows for, and the things that come from that, this sort of integrity, the sacrifice. And so I think, that is a unique blessing because what it means out of the people trying to love them is we're in the probably the enviable position of getting to say our strategy to love these people is to have integrity. It's like we don't have to like develop a super a really nuanced catechesis, even though there are all these theological things around the edges, right? Their sense of morality is different. They're kind of unmoored by, American Christendom, not completely, but right, getting pretty far away. And so yeah, there are some things that we need to think through, but largely all of those things I found are proxies for integrity. Do you mean what you say? Because they do, right? And that's why you can find people among their generation who have a sense that, hey, I'm in the wrong body, which I can only imagine, like what grief that must feel like, and that it goes beyond that expression and into, I'm going to do something about it, right? If something's real, if it's true, it's worth sacrificing for. Right. So there's so much beauty in that. I've said that Gen Z is a generation of martyrs waiting to hear a gospel good enough, worthy of them, right? I think they're hearing gospels all the time, right? And the culture around them has gotten quite good at articulating a gospel, a good news to them that's worthy of sacrificing for. I think the church, we just have to we have to catch up. So those are some of the unique advantages. I mean, some of the Gen Z leaders that I get exposed to are the most passionate, most serious, full of integrity. They want the gospel to fill up their whole lives. That's, it's important to them that they're following Jesus on Sunday and on Monday and on Tuesday and at 2 a.m. And that's really, really important. They're not really interested in the games or the what it looks like. In fact, they are disgusted by it. There's a low level contempt. I think for many of them, Christians feel like religious politicians. It's like, yeah, well, okay, whatever. You're just saying that. You're saying that to get my vote. You're saying that to get, you just translate that into the church. You're just saying that, so I'll come. You're just saying that, so I won't be so bothered by this issue or that issue. You're just saying that. You don't mean that. When you're home alone, you don't really do that. If you were in my shoes, you wouldn't really be taking your advice. There's sort of that. The unique disadvantages are kind of the mirrors of that, which is in a world where they have so much access to so many really articulate, bright people offering them a message of good news. That is like a terrifying world to live in. It used to sort of be, I don't know how to do X, Y, Z. Hopefully I can find someone in my life, and then maybe it's like the yellow pages, I'll call someone, or I know someone at my church, maybe they can help me with that. Then you get the internet and Google. Now it's like, oh, okay, I'll Google it, but you still have this sort of credibility thing you have to sort of work through. You're trying to find the knowledge, and Google connected you, normally it used to be to a person or to an organization. It was a bridge to something else. Gen Z lives in a world where it's like the expert is at all times at their fingertips. They can sit at the feet. They can be discipled by someone a million miles away on TikTok, and have an entire relationship with them. And how do you figure out who to listen to? It's the wisdom thing. With all the knowledge, how do you figure out what's actually the right thing that's going to serve you? Do you listen to the Christians who keep getting divorced, right? You're like, right, and there's all these other things that come along with it. So
you're saying that we can get the audience from them by portraying integrity as well as authenticity. So which I believe takes time, right?
Yes. Yeah, it is one of the things when I'm speaking with churches or leaders or consulting, I'm trying to help them first accept and then delight in the idea that to love Gen Z well and to disciple them well is going to be inefficient. So much of the church growth movement and what we've trained pastors in and church planters in, at least in America, I can't speak for outside of America, is essentially, and I'm not saying this in a pejorative way. I don't intend this to be like a slight. I'm trying to name it correctly. Almost a sort of spiritual enterprisation. It's like we're grabbing the best methods from the business world and trying to optimize them for a spiritual context. And I think that works in lots of different ways, as well as it does. But you're dealing with, my experience has been that what it took me, I remembered coming to this realization that the sort of things I was trying to teach and help millennials believe, it took me 3 times longer on average to get a Gen Z there.
Wow. For
lots of different reasons. Some of those are cultural, but it just, skipping past all of that so I don't get distracted, it was just slower, much slower. And so for me, it became trying to tell people you need to actually embrace some inefficiency. You need to say to yourself, okay, I've got a group of young Gen Z people in my church. Like, here's where I want them to be. And whatever the timeline is, you should probably double it. And then you should learn to delight in that journey, to delight in the inefficiency. Because they'll be able to tell if you are or not, right? They'll be able to tell if, this is taking too long, right? But you're supposed to be the people, you leave the 99 for the one. Right. So it all goes back to an integrity thing, but like they can kind of tell if like, well, man, like I've been meeting up with you for like a year and I'm not really seeing any progress. And it's like, so it wasn't about me. It's about you making progress with me. Right. So they're sensitive to that. And that's why it really is cool, because the harvest is ripe and plentiful for the people who will say, when I'm doing evangelism training, and I'm talking to churches, I talk about the 10-year commitment. I'm saying the 10, that mentally, that's the mental adjustment I'm like, I want you to make. The mental adjustment is that I'm willing to dedicate and devote my life to this person in the name of Jesus for the next 10 years.
Looking to grow as a disciple maker and leader? EAPTC Academy offers practical, hands-on discipleship training to equip you for Christian ministry and missions. With a 9-month program and flexible study options, you'll receive first-hand guidance to fulfill the Great Commission. With a global reach and multilingual courses, the Academy partners with churches to empower individuals to live out the Great Commission. Whether through guided cohorts or independent study, EAPTC Academy prepares you for impactful ministry. Visit eaptc.online to learn more.
Thank you for being part of the EAPTC global family. United, we can reach every life, every community, and every nation for the glory of God.